Good morning, John.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So thank you for joining us for breakfast instead of cocktail hour to talk
No, I
about
went from a
your book.
cocktail party to a tea party, but I have my cup of tea here. Look,
Me too. Me too.
uh,
There we are. And so I want to say congratulations to you because on Monday, right, your book Help for the Haunted came out in paperback.
yes, it did. I'm so excited. And my family finally thinks I'm a real writer because it's for sale in Costco and Sam's Club.
Now, so I wondered if you wanted to start by telling us a little bit about the book, about Help for the Haunted, for people who haven't read it.
Well, okay, it's my third novel, and it's about this young girl named Sylvie Mason, and really, it's part murder mystery, part family story, and sort of a coming of age story, I guess, too. And her parents have this unusual occupation in that they are demonologists. They help haunted souls find peace. But before you think anything, no one flies around in the air. No one grows fangs. No one can move objects with their mind. It's not that sort of book. It's not paranormal. It's really a family story at heart. But in the opening chapter, her parents are lured to this church on the outskirts of town, and they are murdered that night. And so the book then flashes back and forth in time from the years leading up to the murder as it tells the story of this unusual family, and then the months following as Sylvie tries to piece together what happened to her parents that night. And that's the book.
And so I know I read it, of course, before it came out, back in hardcover. And one of the things that you and I had talked about when we've talked about the book before is that you get an interesting reaction from people who think it is or want it to be supernatural, and it's not.
It's
So
not.
what do you do when people bring that up with you?
I tell them to go read Twilight. Just kidding. I know. To me, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with those books. I like all those books, but that territory has seemed so well tread by now. There have been so many books where people do all this magical stuff, and I just wasn't interested in writing that type of story. I wanted to write a very human story, but about a family who has this strange occupation. And so to me, it's much more scary to kind of tiptoe up to the edge of what's possible and what's believable and leave the reader to wonder, well, what's the truth of the situation? Is this supernatural, as some moments in the book seem to be, or is there some real-life explanation? And I feel like that's creepier and scarier, and that's what I wanted to do.
I agree. I am a big fan of good endings. I think that books, it's often hard to have a truly satisfying ending in a book, and I loved the ending of this one
Thank
because
you.
and that description that you had made, I think is great about you kind of step right up toward the edge. So then when things kind of start to be revealed, I think it's very satisfying for the reader.
I appreciate that because I work so hard on this. It was a big gap since my last book. It was 9 years since Strange But True, if you could believe it. But I work in magazines and for many years, and that sort of kept me busy. And I kept starting books and throwing them away, and they weren't working. And then when I began Help for the Haunted, I just really had to stick with it for a number of years. And the ending was so important to me because I wanted the readers to leave feeling satisfied and that most things that needed explaining were explained. Of course, I left a few things to their imagination because I think that's more fun for the reader. So, oh, sipping time.
Sorry.
Mm-mm. I'm doing it too.
And so then I also wanted to say the paperback has a different cover than the hardcover. So what do you think about the two different covers?
I really loved the hardcover, but I love the paperback cover. Wait, do I have it somewhere? Do you have it? Wait, hold on one second. Be right back. I just love it. I feel like it's like I don't know. There's something about her in the red coat in the woods. It's very alluring and mysterious, and I don't know. I'm just into it. And I don't know if you saw, but I had my dog Ruby shoot a commercial for it. Did you see it?
Yeah. I'll
I
put it on
posted
page too.
that. Okay, yeah. Which is really kind of silly and fun, but like got a big response. But I don't know. I really like this cover. Do you have a favorite? Did you like the hardcover cover better, or do you like?
Well, I think the hardcover is it's mysterious in a different way. You know, you get a sense that it's not about people. I had done this thing recently at the American Library Association conference with Nancy Pearl, who you might know is kind of the
Oh yeah.
librarian with the action figure. And she did this great thing about how do you read a book in 5 minutes or less, you know, so that you can kind of see, like help people with a book that you haven't read. And she pointed out some things like when you look at the cover, if there's a person on the cover, it's probably going to be a story with a person in it, you know, which seems really simple. And so
As
I think
opposed
it's
to like
really interesting.
Animal Farm or something? What do you
I
mean?
guess so. Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I think when you think about the two covers, like the original hardcover cover was kind of that dark. It was a little bit darker, right? It was black, and green, and then I don't think you can. It's not very clear. It's a little misty, you know, which maybe kind of goes into the supernatural feel. Whereas the paperback, I think, makes it clear that it's going to be very much about a young woman,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
but still has that kind of mysterious kind of thing, and that the red coat focuses on her. So I just thought it was really interesting to see the difference in the two covers.
Well, what's funny is a couple of people wrote me and said, I love the new cover, but Sylvie would never wear a red coat. But she's often wearing like, you know, she's basically orphaned, so she's wearing whatever she pulls out of her closet, you know, and half the time she's wearing summer clothes in the middle of winter. So I said, well, maybe she could have found a coat of her mother's and put it on or something like that. So, yeah,
So, John, you actually have a question from the audience.
I do.
Yeah, so let me just pull it up. So, somebody from Twitter says, why introduce Frankie toward the end of the book and not earlier?
Well, it's a spoiler for anybody who hasn't read it, but actually she is introduced. If you go back through it, she's referenced a couple of times. And then when Sylvie goes to meet her mom, she's referenced there. So, and also she's actually introduced because, again, this is a spoiler for people who haven't read it. She's the light, you know, she's all those things that we assume have a supernatural explanation, but then in the end, it's her. So she's actually all throughout. It's my way of thinking.
There we go. And then let's see. And then somebody also commented that Sylvie seems older than I imagine on the paperback cover.
See, that's what someone else said too. She looks a little older. Well, actually, the funny thing is, if you look at the hardcover, her leg is kind of bent in a funny way. It almost looks like Gumby if you look, and I think it's supposed to be the blur of her running. But
Yeah.
actually, she looked younger to me on that cover.
Yes.
I would have thought, and a little older on this cover than I would have thought. So, you know, I don't design the covers, and HarperCollins does such a great job. William Morrow does such a great job designing them, and you know, there's some room for interpretation. And but yeah, I agree. She does seem a little older in this one. On the hardcover, a little younger, but yeah.
And then, so I also wonder too, I saw on your site that you're trying to do something with 50 book clubs in 50 states. Do you want to talk about that a
Yes.
little bit?
Well, it's funny because for years I was an editor at Cosmopolitan magazine, and we used to have this initiative every year called, I think they don't do it anymore, but it was like 50 bachelors from 50 states. So every November, a bunch of these very good-looking young single guys would descend upon our offices, and you know, they would do Regis and Kelly and the Today Show, and you know, they'd kind of make the media rounds, and they'd have a big party for them. And it was funny, there'd always be like the one assistant who came slinking in the next morning, or a couple, and they'd be like, Mr. Kentucky, you know. You know, they stayed up a little late with Mr. Kentucky or Mr. Tennessee. Anyway, but yeah, but I was just thinking about that initiative and how it got so much attention, the 50 bachelors from 50 states. And I just had the idea of 50 book clubs from 50 states. It was born out of that. Because first I was thinking 30 book clubs in 30 days, and I was thinking that would be kind of hard to organize, but 50 book clubs in 50 states. And we actually we've had hundreds of entries. We really did right away. And the only states left are like Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, North Dakota, Vermont, and Nevada. That's what we have left. But I mean, we're actually, some of the ones that are, you know, there are many that are from the same state. We have a lot from Ohio, we have a lot from New York, a lot from New Jersey, and I'm going to try to do those as well. But the first book clubs to enter from each state win my backlist of books, and then if I complete the challenge, every book club wins like a massive tote bag of book club books selected by me. So I'm just going to pick titles that I love, published
That's
by
awesome. I
Yeah,
mean, and
it's
that's
just a
also
fun
a
way.
good segue too, because you are you still doing work with the Today Show on their book club?
I am. I didn't, I sort of go on every, sort of haphazardly right now, but I'll probably do fall books. And, for years I did summer books, fall, holiday books, winter books, spring books, and so that's just been a great opportunity for me to be able to go on and champion books that I really love and to hold up a book in front of the world and say, this book, you all have to get it. And I'm such a big reader and such a big book lover, and so it's like I remember holding up Jodi Picoult's 19 Minutes. I loved that book, and Lovely Bones. I love that book, or Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen, or so many books by Chris Bojalian, who I've come, and many of these authors I've come to know subsequently. But they're just books that I really love, so it's a real thrill to be able to do that. Although I have to say, I was so horrible at TV in the beginning. Like, I was on this charity event for multiple sclerosis called Books for a Better Life, which is organized by this lovely guy named Scott Manning, and I was a book editor at the time at Cosmo, and there were other book producers and editors there, and I was just telling stories about working at Cosmo and Helen Gurley Brown and funny stuff, and this woman afterwards named Carol Story said, "You'd be great on TV, you should come on to talk about books." I was horrible. I was so bad at it. Like, did you ever see, what's the movie Broadcast News where he's like sweating? And
Yeah.
did you ever see that movie where it's like melting down? That was me. I thought Brian Gumbel was going to be like, "What's on page 142?" I was so bad. But subsequently I got better. I started doing Regis and Kelly and then the Today Show on the Plaza, and that sort of in front of a live audience sort of allowed me to relax and have fun with it. And I realized no one was going to quiz me on the book. They just wanted to know what it was about. So.
And so I have one more question, I think, and it's a good last question. And Jack from Twitter asked me to have a shout out for him for this question.
Okay.
So
Hi, Jack.
Says, are you writing a new novel right now? And then he says he wonders what he can read in the near future. So maybe you have to take that as two questions.
Two questions. I mean, just what other books? Well, I hope
yeah. So are you writing something right now? Or are you working on something?
Yes, I am. I started writing. I've been traveling so much since Help for the Haunted came out in September, and so my favorite thing to do is write longhand. So I just got a bunch of legal pads, and I was on airplanes or when I'm in a hotel, I just write longhand, and then when I get back home, like today, I'll sit and sort of type over and then naturally edit what I'm working on. So I'm actually about 120 pages into something new. But I did this event. You were there, Stephanie, with Donna Tartt last year at Book Expo, and she had some great quote. I don't remember it exactly, but she was like, trying to describe a book you're writing, like while you're writing it to someone, is like trying to describe a dream. It's like, well, you were there, but you weren't there. You were wearing red. You weren't, and I'm so bad at describing what it is while I'm writing it, but it's in the vein of what I've done before, yet at the same time it's completely different than what I've done before, if that makes any sense. And then in terms of what he should read, I just read this great book I love called The Winter People by I love that book by Jennifer McMahon, and I never read, or actually I read one other book of hers before, but this one I just thought was creepy and weird and dark. So Jack, if you want something sort of creepy, weird, and dark, The Winter People, I'd recommend it. Also, Chris Bojalian has a new book, Close Your Eyes, Hold Hands, which was great. Sort of, it reminded me of Rule of the Bone by Russell Banks. It's told in this sort of young teenage voice, but it's a girl, and her parents are responsible for this nuclear reactor accident that happens in the state of Vermont, and it's what happens to her after that. It's a great read.
It's very funny, John. You picked two books that are set in Vermont, my old home state.
And Vermont, one of the 6 cities, states where I don't have a book club yet. Hello, Vermont.
Step up.
Yeah.
So, John, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning, and Jack. And so after we're all set, I'm going to attach this video to the Help for the Haunted record in BiblioCommons. So all of our BiblioCommons staff and library staff and patrons will be able to see us have our breakfast chat. Happy tea.
Well, can I say, first of all, thank you to you, and thank you to so many of the librarians who have supported this book from early on, and they're really the ones who have made it a success because they championed it from way back when it was still barely just past the manuscript phase. I started hearing from librarians, so thank you to all of you. I really appreciate it. And I used to hide out in the librarian when I was a bullied little kid, so I always joke that librarians saved my life. So still true.
Yeah. We are sometimes credited with raising children instead of wolves.
Yeah.
Well, have a good day, John.
You too. Bye.
Bye.